When I test FPV goggles, I almost always test them with a combination of patch and Omni antennas. And that leads some people to wonder whether I'm really showing the goggles in their best light. Why don't I put ultra high gain patch antennas on the goggles to maximize the range and penetration? And the truth is that this is what I usually run in real life. I usually do not run ultra high gain patch antennas on my goggles to get the maximum range and penetration. And that's because there is a hidden downside to patch antennas that I think a lot of people are overlooking. And it may or may not affect you, but you should know it's there. That's going to be the topic of this video. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. Now, here's the thing about antennas that a lot of people don't know. Antennas are kind of like this flashlight. And this is true whether the antenna is receiving or transmitting, although it's easier to think about it from the transmit side because it sort of makes sense, like the light bulb puts out light, the antenna puts out radio waves. But it works the same for transmitting and receiving. So I want you to think of the antenna's coverage pattern like this flashlight beam. There's an area where the energy is going, and there's an area where the energy is not going. There's an area where the coverage is, and an area where the coverage is not. And if I go to a higher gain antenna, that's like taking and focusing the beam down. That is almost exactly, electrically speaking, RFLE speaking, what a higher gain antenna does. It focuses the beam or the coverage area down into a tighter area. And that means you get more energy in this area, but the area in which the energy is smaller. Low gain antenna, high gain antenna. Now, the amount of energy that's coming out of the antenna is the same in every case. In one case, it's spread thinner. In one case, it's focused tighter. But the key thing is that you don't get a high gain antenna without giving something up in terms of the coverage pattern. And that's the hidden downside of patch antennas. So I've set up a little test here in my yard to try and demonstrate this effect. I've got the quadcopter set up way over there, and I've got my goggles, how I normally run them, with a patch and an Omni. And if I face directly at the quadcopter, we can see we're getting a solid 50 megabits per second. But if I turn around and face away, we can see that immediately drops. I've intentionally picked this location to be right at the bare edge of the range of the Omni antennas. So as long as I'm facing forward with the patch antennas, I get great signal. But as soon as I fly around to the side or the rear of the quadcopter, my signal gets weak and I drop out. How would this situation be different if I had 4 directional antennas instead of 2 directional antennas and 2 Omnis? Let's find out. So it's not that surprising that while facing directly at the quadcopter, I have 50 megabits per second. The difference becomes apparent as I begin to turn away. And I immediately start to see the signal drop as I turn as little as, wow, that's pretty radical. What if I turn this way? Oh, there it goes. Yep, it's dropping down and it's going to drop out. There it goes. It drops out. Now, I know that this is far from a perfect lab test. In order to really demonstrate the differences between 2 antennas, you need very controlled conditions, and real-world environments are always messy. But the general principle that we're demonstrating here is true and is real. If you decide that you want to use higher gain directional antennas instead of Omnis, then you will get increased range and penetration in front of you, that is true, but you will get significantly decreased range and penetration to the sides and to the back. And whether that works for you depends a lot on where you fly relative to where you're sitting. If you know that you almost always fly within a 180-degree arc in front of you, do this. This is the right decision for you. But if you often fly more in a 360-degree arc, like you're sitting in a courtyard in the middle of the office park and you're going all around you, this is a poor choice. Because, and if you don't know this phenomena, maybe you don't even notice that it's happening. You just think, oh, there must be a thick wall over there, or some reason why I can't fly over there. It's that you're flying off your antenna's flight beam. And if you had an Omni antenna instead, you might be getting more usable coverage in the areas that you're actually trying to fly. The bottom line is this: whenever you watch somebody testing goggles, if they're testing them with ultra high gain patches and you see that they're getting a certain amount of range and penetration, you should think, am I also going to be using high gain patches, or am I better served by using an Omni and a directional antenna, and therefore maybe I'm not going to get that same range and penetration. As long as whoever is doing the comparison is using the same general type of antenna for the different goggles that they're testing, then you're probably going to get a fair comparison. And if they're using different antennas, like on one set of goggles they're using 4 high gain patches, and on another set of goggles they're using Omnis, then there has to be a justification for that decision, and you have to understand that that's going to affect the results. Now, another thing that affects the range and penetration you're going to get is going to be the polarization of the antennas that you use. Should you be using left-hand polarized or right-hand polarized? And does it even really matter? I've got another video about that, and I'm going to put a card on screen, and you can go check that out. I'll see you there.